Welcome to Her Own Boss, the podcast created by graduates to help young women find their inner entrepreneur. This is your host Nikki, and today I'm joined by Nikita Khandwala, a recent Spanish and Linguistics graduate, social entrepreneur, and careers coach. Nikita and I talk about the pressures uni students face when entering the world of work and how important it is to be confident and take that first step in your career. Nikita also shares with us how she's empowering students to define their own success and how her startup Unbox is breaking down barriers to diversity and inclusion in the tech industry. Hope you enjoy, and don't forget to leave us a review and subscribe. We start every episode with 3 quickfire questions, just so that the audience can get to know you. They're a little bit silly, but don't overthink it. Just the first thing that comes to mind. So you ready?
Okay, ready.
What superpower would you have if you had one?
Oh, probably being invisible.
Nice. And what's your favorite show to binge watch?
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Oh my God, a classic. And what's your dream holiday location?
Oh, that's really tough. Probably New Zealand.
New Zealand. Have you ever been before?
I have, and it was the best place in the world. It's amazing.
I was there for like 6 weeks last year and it was incredible.
Oh, wow, that's so amazing.
I love it. So I just wanted to start off first by saying congratulations, because I know that you finished your degree this year, which is so exciting. But what was it like finishing up exams at home during lockdown and a pandemic and all of that crazy stuff?
Yeah, firstly, thank you. It was super weird. I mean, I think you're working for 4 years. That was the length of my degree, towards what you think will be kind of this amazing climax of your experience. And you'll feel really like cathartic. And then we were sort of sitting in our pajamas at home doing our finals. So it was a bit odd, but ultimately the whole experience was a lot more chilled. I feel like the way of assessing us was actually better. Because we had remote open book exams as opposed to sort of regurgitating material in a hall wearing kind of crazy weird outfits. So I think that part of it was good. But yeah, I just feel really lucky to have been able to finish the degree, to graduate, and to, start a new job at what's a really difficult time, and hopefully help other people do the same, really.
So I graduated 2 years ago, and that year, in like the March, April time, we were writing our dissertations. There were the university lecturer strikes going on. And then in March of that year, there was the Beast from the East. And I remember all of my friends thinking like, of course, the year that we're trying to finish university, it's this awful. And then obviously this year's come, and we're just so in awe of people that have managed to finish up their degrees this year. So well done.
Thank you. Yeah, class of COVID 2020. It could be a lot worse though. Always look on the bright side.
Yes, always. And so you studied Spanish and Linguistics at uni, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm just interested how you chose your degree. And did you kind of have a career plan going into it, or did you just choose to study something that you liked or were good at?
No, so I was super lucky with my school and my education. My parents kind of always felt that that was a priority. And as a result, my school really encouraged us to do things that we cared about and were passionate about. And at the time, I loved languages. I loved Hispanic culture and literature. And linguistics was also a discipline that I knew very little about, but really intrigued me. And so I decided to just go for it, because I also felt that if I managed to get a degree from a good university, then hopefully I could do different things going from that. And my degree would actually open lots of doors rather than restricting them. And so that was an interesting conversation with my parents. Asian heritage, obviously, it's traditionally like economics or medicine or something like that. But ultimately, they were really supportive. And again, I was really lucky with that. And it was definitely an interesting degree. And I think ultimately what made my university experience was just being able to do everything outside of my degree at the same time, because I think that's what's really helped me kind of grow personally and professionally. What about you? What did you study again?
So I studied psychology, and that decision was really based off of a course that I took in my final year of high school. I think before that, I thought I would maybe study biology because I enjoyed that at school as well. But I honestly had no idea what I wanted to do after uni. I feel like my timeline looking forward was like, of course, I'm going to go to uni. And I think that was kind of like a family and cultural expectation as well.
Mhm.
But think it was kind of similar to what you were saying with your parents. It was just do what you want to do, enjoy yourself, and we'll figure it out from there. But I think for me, the expectations came from like the educational background that I had in high school, like definitely very privileged education wise. And I think the expectation was like, you're going to go to uni and you're going to do well. And then while I was at uni, the expectation was you're going to go into a job in like consulting or finance or banking, law, doctor, whatever. So
corporate group thing, love it.
what was that like being at Oxford? Because that's obviously very strong academic university to be at. Did you feel that pressure going through your degree?
The interesting thing about Oxford is that it naturally attracts people who are, yes, very academic and intelligent, but also people who are attracted to those kind of brand names like Oxford, Cambridge, whatever it might be. And as a result, when it comes to thinking about next steps, Oxford as an institution really encourages people to go into these corporate roles. It becomes the norm and it's sort of a vicious cycle. And as a result of that, people are not actively discouraged to go into alternative industries, but it's just a lot harder to break into them. So, for example, I had a meeting, I think it was last year, with the director of the Oxford Career Service. We were talking about corporate groupthink and why it was that it seemed like there were so few opportunities when obviously there was so much diverse talent at Oxford. Yeah. And why were people not going into different sorts of industries? And he told me that, well, actually, that's a big misconception because only about 13% of Oxford grads go into jobs in the city. Oh, yeah. And I was like, this doesn't sound right. Yeah. And now the fact is that stat actually disguises something a bit deeper, which is the fact that the companies that Oxford students apply to are like the kind of creme de la creme. And as a result, obviously, they're super competitive and very few people get in. So 13% are obviously the number of people who get into those roles, but the percentage of people who are applying to those roles is probably a lot higher. So I think that ultimately a lot of good higher education institutes sort of cover up the passivity that they have in encouraging students into similar roles like this in finance and consulting and law, which isn't a bad thing. Like, we've got to say that is the right path for a lot of people. But the simple fact is that it's not for everyone. And I think it's really important that we start to encourage people to actually explore alternative opportunities that might suit them better and where they'd be better placed to learn early in their career and develop themselves professionally.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really surprising, that stat, because I would have thought that it's a lot more. And I don't know what it was for my university, but certainly when you're kind of in the moment and you're in your final year or even your penultimate year and you're looking at internships, it feels like everybody is going for these jobs. You kind of immediately have your blinders on because you don't think anything else is really worthy.
Exactly.
What kind of experiences did you have during university to kind of broaden your horizons and learn a bit more about yourself and what you wanted to get into?
Yeah, it's a good question. It was a whirlwind, to be honest. I think it's really easy to say all of this, but then actually putting it into practice is something quite different. So when I decided to study Spanish and linguistics and I started at uni, I was like you, I had zero clue what I was going to do afterwards. I didn't even really know what I was interested in outside of my degree. And I was super lucky because halfway through my first year, I found this open role, volunteer role at a startup called Project Access. Basically, the mission of Project Access at that time was to sever the connection between a child's socioeconomic background and what they go on to achieve later in life. I knew I was quite interested in education, but I didn't know much about it. And so I was like, okay, let's just try out for the role, see what comes of it. And honestly, it was the best decision I made, primarily because I was exposed to the three things that have become my biggest passions in life. So that was number one, access to education, number two, the startup space, and number three, tech. And also kind of number four, amazing people, because it was the kind of place where you felt super inspired every team meeting and every conversation you had. And that sort of inspired me to learn more about the startup ecosystem and how that intersected with education and more about edtech and things like that. And so after that, I decided to intern at a startup accelerator during my year abroad, which was also an incredible experience. But that was only after going to intern at an industrial technology company, which was massive and which was an interesting experience because it was this massive corporate. And I think seeing the juxtaposition between what it was like to work at a massive corporate and the bureaucracy and hierarchy that was involved in that, and then working with some really cool, dynamic, fast-growing startups made me realize that actually this is the way to make impact, and particularly social impact, because the fast pace at which you can move in the startup world is sort of incomparable to anything else. But I was really lucky in that I had the opportunity to experience a really wide range of industries at uni throughout the 4 years. And I think that sometimes people think, okay, like I can just do one internship one summer and then, either I'll love it or hate it, and I can decide what grad job I want. And I don't think it works like that, because you never know what else is out there.
How did you find all of these experiences?
I think that ultimately it was always just a bit of luck and quite a lot of chance. So I remember that how I found out about Startup Chile, for example, which was the accelerator that I interned at. My friend had a lecture at Oxford about Startup Chile, which was really random, but he knew that I was looking for placements for my year abroad then and told me about it and said, why don't you just send an email? And there is no way that I would ever have found out about that if not. But that's one kind of massive advice that I give to anyone who's trying to figure out what the hell it is they want to do. It's just network and do talk to people and follow people on Instagram or LinkedIn that you think are doing amazing things, such as yourself, because you never know like what amazing things they're going to come out with and how they may be able to help you down the line or how you might be able to help them.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about it being a bit of luck, but then also just speaking to people and finding out what they're interested in. Because I always found, if summer's coming up and I'm thinking, okay, like I should get a job, everyone else has an internship and a job.
Yeah.
You look at the university careers service and sometimes it can just be so uninspiring, or that they're getting thousands of applications and it can be really intimidating. But I think the experiences that I had, they weren't paid. And I know that's a huge privilege to be able to do unpaid internships. I found them through speaking to people and asking around and just seeing something at a society or at like a university lecture and then saying, do you need any help? So yeah, I think you almost have to get creative and really, really search for what you want, because it's not going to come to you straight away.
Yeah, we're moving into a world where a lot of the opportunities you will get do come from the network and the brand that you put out there. And I think that's something that students and kind of young professionals are still anxious about, don't know how to do. And so I think if you just try and really build that confidence in yourself and just take the first step, it really makes you feel like you can do it going forward and actually create your own opportunities, as you say.
Yeah, once you've done it once, you feel way more confident to do it again. It's that first hurdle you have to go over.
Yeah, always the way.
And so I wanted to ask a little bit about Unbox as well, which is the startup that you're a founder of. Could you tell us a bit about how Unbox started, how you not only finished your degree during a pandemic, but also launched a startup, and what's kind of happening with it now?
You make it sound so glorious. But yeah, so basically the story is that I think it was last November, I had just come back from China because I was doing this sort of UN program out there, which was awesome. And I got on a 10-hour flight to come back to London, and I had an interview at a top consulting firm the next day. And then I went to this office, totally jet lagged, the next day with my suitcase trailing along behind me, probably looking like an absolute fool. I was like, this is the most important interview of my life. This is the dream firm. Got to nail it.
Yeah.
And I went in and it was 5 p.m. on a Friday afternoon.
Oh.
The guy was not happy to be there. Let's just say that. You could see it on his face. It's Friday afternoon. Why am I interviewing this kid? Like, I want to go home and enjoy my weekend. But me being me, I was like really determined to make the most of it. I was like, I'm going to turn this guy's mood around. I did not.
Oh, no.
The interview went very badly because I just totally lost my cool. I got very nervous. At the end of the day, I hadn't prepared enough. And I got the train back to Oxford that evening and just went to my room and cried. And I thought it was the end of the world. This was kind of my third interview that month or something. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to get a grad job? Like, why does no one want to hire me? Yeah. What am I doing wrong? Maybe I'm just not that smart. And for a couple of days, I just felt really low. And I think that's, again, when the major imposter syndrome I've had throughout being at Oxford really kicked in again. And then I actually came home one weekend and my sister picked me up from the station. And we were talking about, the interview and how I'd really messed it up. And she was like, I know it seems really difficult, but as soon as you take the first step, you feel so liberated and it becomes so much easier. And she's a massive role model to me, by the way, however much it irritates me to say that. It was only when she said that I realized, hang on, like maybe the reason that I did so badly at this interview is not because I'm not capable and not because I'm not smart, but actually because I don't really care about consulting. And I don't know anything about this firm. And it's just that it's been fed to me for 4 years. And I'm like, oh, this is one of the best firms in the world. It must be what I want, surely. And at that point, it was a major turning point for me. And I realized that actually, you know, I shouldn't just be pursuing something because everyone around me is telling me to. That was also around the time I met Sophia, my amazing co-founder, and she was having a similar problem at the internship stage because she's a couple of years younger than me. And we just got together and we were like, this is ridiculous. Like, we both love startups, but how on earth do you get into it? And we decided that what we were going to try and do was make startups sexier than the city, basically. And we have been on like a 6-month journey up to this point, and we've matched about 200 to 250 students to opportunities in the startup space. And it's been a total whirlwind, very difficult in places, as it always is. But at the moment, we've got 100 students going through our program and doing awesome internships with really cool, dynamic startups. And it makes it worth it because even the little bit that we've managed to do so far is hopefully changing people's perceptions of what success means, because they're getting stuck in across completely different business functions and they're working with like the founders of these companies who are obviously super smart people. So yeah, that's how it all started, and it's going well at the moment.
Cool.
And we're just in the phase of trying to actually build a platform that is really focused on Gen Z and helping them find opportunities that they're passionate about, basically.
Yeah, there's so much that I want to touch on there. So you mentioned that your sister is one of your role models, which I think is so sweet. And I'm sure my sister will be listening to this, so feel free to say that about me at any point. But what other support did you and your co-founder Sophia have in terms of mentors and role models, and how important was it for you having other people to look up to?
It's so important. I can't overstate the importance of having mentors and role models. And ultimately, what a mentor-mentee relationship is, it's a give and take. And I think a lot of the time, younger people and students feel that they don't have anything to offer people with more experience, but that's simply not the case. So to give an example, the reason, or I guess the impetus for Sophia and I actually starting Unbox after talking about it for like 2 months, was this amazing mentor we have, who's also a woman of color and just literally one of the most amazing humans. She walks into a room and she brightens up. And actually, we invited her to speak in an event at our college. And she just inspired everyone in the room. We actually took her to our college bar after the event. And she loved the idea and she really encouraged us to go after it. She was like, I'll help you, you know, anything you need, like, let's just do this. This is such a great idea. And that was kind of the seed of Unbox at that point. And so a couple of weeks later, we'd been conversing over WhatsApp, the three of us, and she invited us to her office in London that had this massive whiteboard on one wall. And we just had a crazy brainstorming session. Yeah. And we just started it. We were like, let's do a pilot. Let's test if this is something people want. She was like, I can help you with startup contact. Obviously, we had a massive audience of students and we just did it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, particularly again, when you're young and you are part of a minority, it's so easy to feel like, okay, I have this great idea, but how on earth do I go about it? I don't have resource. I don't have funding. Am I even smart enough to do this? And sometimes you just need that little nudge from someone who looks like you or sounds like you, or who's been through similar things to you, to just say, you've got this and I've got you. And that's such a powerful thing.
I think you touched on something really important there about representation and having someone to look up to that looks like you and sounds like you and has similar background to you. And I guess, is this kind of something that you're trying to change as well through Unbox? Essentially, what you're doing is you're partnering students up with startups so that they can get that work experience, which I think is amazing. Having worked for a large company, the value and the experiences you get for working for a smaller company can be huge because, you know, everything's so dynamic and you have more responsibility. What about startups? What about that ecosystem do you think needs to change? Why is there a need for students and fresh ideas and new minds to come into startups as well?
Gosh, you ask such good questions, Nikki, honestly.
Thank you.
The perfect podcast host. Yeah, you touched on two really important things. So firstly, the student side, I guess, of the marketplace. Yeah, super important. I think it's about giving students that diversity of upskilling opportunity, which is so important and which they don't necessarily get in a corporate space because you're often in one role, you're working kind of on the lowest rung of your team and stuff like that. Whereas in a startup, you're given responsibility from the start. But I think what's just as important, if not more important, is the startup side. You probably know that the startup ecosystem in the UK is super, super homogenous. And there are very few diverse voices who are actually given a platform and who are actually founding amazing businesses. But that's a misconception because they're out there. We just don't see them and we don't hear from them. Mm-hmm. And what we're trying to do with Unbox at the same time as giving students these upskilling and professional opportunities is to diversify the UK ecosystem however we can. Mm-hmm. So by basically driving down costs for startup recruitment and driving down the efforts they have to take to get these top students, top diverse students, might I add, we're also diversifying the kind of talent pool from which they recruit. And ultimately, one of the reasons that the startup ecosystem is so undiverse is because when startups recruit, they ask for referrals from their founder network because they're the people they can trust. Now, often those referrals are going to be people who are from exactly the same background as them, typically a white male or whatever it might be. And that just perpetuates that cycle of a lack of diversity in the ecosystem. So I think representation is so important if we want to drive this wave of innovation and give diverse founders the platform that they deserve. So yeah, we've kind of encapsulated that methodology that we have into a 3-part phrase, which is reverse, immerse, diverse. And what that means is that firstly, we're trying to kind of reverse the corporate groupthink that exists at UK universities and encourage people to pursue their own version of success. The second part is about actually providing them access to those immersive opportunities so they can learn and upskill. And the third part is actually about diversifying the ecosystem. And we have a very personal connection to that last part because our core team is extremely diverse. Yeah. And, you know, there are 5 of us. I think we're from 4 different countries, 5 different ethnicities. We have a female majority team. So it's something that we have seen is so powerful in how we think about and tackle problems in our own startup. And that's something that we really want to encourage in the ecosystem as well.
Yeah, I mean, I love the whole idea behind Unbox. And I know we've kind of already touched on it in this episode, but it can sometimes be really difficult when you're at uni or even straight after to find work experience, and potentially even more so if you're from an underrepresented background or lacking confidence. So you know, I love to see that you're helping students with this. And then I also love that you're facilitating diversity and inclusion in startups. But as much as we love a side hustle, we've both also gone down the route of having a full-time grad job as well. So what's the role that you're going into now and how does Unbox kind of sit alongside that?
Yeah, so I'm really excited to start a strategy and analytics grad role at LinkedIn, which is a company I love because similar to, I guess, my personal mission, as I mentioned earlier, of connecting talent and particularly diverse talent to opportunity, LinkedIn is trying to do exactly the same thing and close what they call the network gap, which is basically about how if you go to a certain university or school, your network is going to be X times stronger than if you didn't. But I do also think that we are moving, particularly with Gen Z, into an era exacerbated by COVID, which means that so few people in our generation are going to be doing 9-to-5s. Most of the people I know who started working have side hustles, or they do non-profit work on the side, or they're on some kind of board. And I just think that this is going to become the norm as people work from home more, as people are encouraged to actually diversify their interests and their income streams. And I think that that's a great thing because I don't think that people should necessarily be restricted to a 9-to-5 if they don't want to be. Obviously, that's like the dream for some people, and that's amazing to have that security of a 9-to-5 job. But ultimately, what I'm trying to do and what Unbox is trying to do is to show people that whatever your version or definition of success is, it's completely legitimate and valid. Mm-hmm. And we want to give you the tools and resources to actually chase after that.
Yeah, I like that. And I mean, I completely agree as well that you need more than one experience to know what you want to do. And it's not a bad thing that you're kind of working for a large corporate and trying to do something else. And I guess I'm just wondering as well what advice you'd have for people who are looking to start their side hustle. So whether their kind of main thing at the moment is work or if it's university, if they have an idea, what are some small practical steps that you can take to just start that side hustle that you've been thinking about? And what was that for you with Unbox?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, something I've learned in the past couple of years is that you can have all the ideas in the world, but if you don't have someone to keep you accountable to actually doing something about those ideas, you just won't do it. And that's coming from quite an ambitious, driven person. Everyone is obviously different, but I have had a lot of ideas over the years and never really pursued them until I met Sophia. And she just inspired me to just go for it and do it together. And we did it. And I think that having an accountability partner, whether it's your co-founder, whether it's your sister, whether it's your friend, your parent, is so important, because it not only keeps you aligned with what your true north is and what is most important to you, but it also ensures that if you say you're going to do something, you do it. The second thing I'd say is something that is pretty low effort before you start something is to just do a bunch of research and talk to your potential user. I know it sounds simple, but so many people skip this fundamental step. But ultimately, you have to see if it's something that the market wants, even if it's a non-profit, because if they don't, then you need to iterate the product or think of a new idea. Just do a lot of research and talk to your user. It's cheap. You don't have to spend any money, and they're probably sitting around you. And the last thing I'd say is, honestly, there's no other way to say it. Just do it.
Yeah.
The first step, of course, is always the hardest. We all know that. We've all been through it.
Yeah.
But if you do the first two things and you find yourself an accountability partner and you talk to your user and generate some interest, all you have to do is set up a website. If you set up a website, you can do a lot with that. Set up some social media channels and just see what happens. It doesn't mean that you have to have a fully functioning MVP from day one. No one does. Everyone's MVP is awful.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying here. And I guess for any listeners who don't know what an MVP is, because I think, to be honest, I only learned what this term meant earlier this year. It stands for minimum viable product, and it's essentially like the first and most basic iteration of your idea.
Yeah, I think it might have been Reid Hoffman or someone who said that if you're not embarrassed by the first product that you ship, then you ship too late.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. Like, you shouldn't be aiming for perfection the first time around. You're going to iterate it so many times. So just do it, build something, whatever it might be, and go ahead. And just to give you an example, with Unbox, we had no backend for the first 6 months. We're only building like backend to our platform now. Everything was pretty much Excel and manual.
Right.
So we learned a lot of Excel, which was great. But it meant that also, because we're non-techie founders, we had no choice but to do that if we really wanted to validate our idea in the market. So it can be done. You just have to have the right people around you.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. And I think it's true that it's so easy to set up a website now. There are so many platforms that let you do it. It's so easy to start a social media account because we all have our own personal ones. So just, make another one. But that it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, from the outside, it might look like you're doing loads of complicated stuff in the background. But like you were saying, it was all manual.
Yeah, it was tough. I don't know, because obviously you've got your amazing side hustle, her own boss. Like, how do you manage it? How did you find your team? And how did you guys start up?
Yeah, so we all met because we're all working at the same graduate program. And we were kind of set a challenge in our initial training program, which was, why are only 1 in 3 entrepreneurs in the UK are women? Why do women get less than 1% of VC funding in the UK? And so that kind of got us thinking about it. And then we just thought, there are so many things that you can come up with to solve this problem. It's such a huge issue, but you don't have to have the biggest idea to make a difference. Yeah. And for us, that was starting the podcast. Actually, when you think about it, before I started working on this project, I did not know any female entrepreneurs. And there have been studies which show that I think it's 50% of young men can name an entrepreneur who inspires them, but less than a third of women can. And of those young people that can name an entrepreneur, regardless of gender, the entrepreneur they name, 85% of the time is going to be a man. And so if it goes back to the role model point that you brought up earlier, if you can't think of anyone that looks like you, that comes from the same background as you, that's done something that you want to do, then your impulse, whether it's rational or not, is going to be that I can't do it. And so we just thought, like, you know what, if we have a podcast where we bring on female entrepreneurs or women in business who are kind of doing amazing things, then we're bringing role models to people. And then I guess in terms of balancing it, it helps that we all kind of work for the same company, but I think the thing with side hustles is it's really easy to see everyone else's side hustles and think, oh, I don't have one that's that cool, or I don't have one at all, and want to do it. Or thinking I could never balance that on top of my job or my studies or my family responsibilities, whatever that is. But if you want to do something, you'll find time to do it. So, don't start a side hustle for the fun of it or just because it looks good on a CV. Start one because there's something you're passionate about, and then you will naturally want to work on it. And then, like you said, with your co-founder and your team, just find a team around you who have the same passions and are willing to put in the same amount of work. And it's a lot easier than you think. But yeah, it does take time.
Yeah, couldn't have put it better than myself. And I mean, you call it just a podcast, but honestly, I mean, it might feel like a drop in an ocean to you, but I think that it's doing such amazing work at breaking down barriers because, as we talked about earlier, the power of role models can really not be overstated.
Yeah, thank you. Those are very kind words. Feel free to leave it on a review on our podcast as well.
Of course, 100%.
So that feels like a good place to start to wrap up. But there's one question that we ask all of our guests that I'd like to ask you now. And so the question is, what gives you confidence?
Oh, I love that question. What gives me confidence? So I started creating content a few months ago in the form of blogs, in the form of like creating an Instagram channel aimed at basically everything we talked about, encouraging people to go into what they love rather than what they're told to do. And I think through that, I've had a lot of people come to me and ask for advice or ask for mentorship or whatever it might be. And they always seem to come away feeling hopefully somewhat inspired that they can actually do that because someone's there just giving them the confidence to believe in themselves. And a lot of people don't have that. And I think it's something that's easy to take for granted. And honestly, when I get those messages that are like, oh, you've really helped me, you've really given me the confidence to go out and do this thing, and now I've done it and this has happened, I honestly feel so happy, and it makes everything worth it. Super cheesy, sorry. But ultimately, I think that's what gives me confidence that what I'm doing and my personal mission are really valid and are making an impact, which I think sometimes in the flurry of life is super easy to forget.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. I don't think it's cheesy.
Oh, love it. I think it's cheesy, but we probably just love cheese, to be honest.
I know. I mean, any answer I can think of to that question is going to be cheesy. When we went through our answers as a team, mine was like jamming out to Beyonce and Lizzo. Like, that gives me confidence.
Oh, I love Lizzo. Oh, yeah. And of course, Beyonce. But Lizzo is where it's at right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been so helpful and insightful.
Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, it was great to chat to you.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to check back next week for a mini-sode on how to be unapologetically confident in the workplace with Nikita. If you want to find out more about us, then search @HerOwnBoss Podcast on Instagram, and be sure to subscribe to hear the latest on finding your inner entrepreneur.